and I am going to pass it over to Justin Williams from the RCMP Heritage Centre, who's going to be our presenter for today.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. I've missed you all. Haven't been really able to join any chats so far this year, and I'll talk about why in a little bit. It's also really weird, the first time I'm presented in a while without a mask on, so it feels weird to see my face. But I'm happy to be here. And yeah, my name is Justin, and I work at the RCMP Heritage Centre in Regina. Throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. There's no such thing as a stupid question. I like to challenge kids with that all the time, and I like to throw it back at them, so it's always fun. Or you can type it in the chat, go right ahead. And my one rule is that no one falls asleep during the presentation. It's been touch and go for some kids, but so far no one's fallen asleep or that I've noticed, so that's good. Originally, I am not from here. You can't tell from my non-regional accent from here. Some people have told me about that. I'm originally from Ottawa, grew up there, and then decided to be a little bit different, and I went to the East Coast for school. Everyone was staying in town, and I was like, I'm going to be different. Just like this presentation you'll probably see. And I also promise you won't look at my face the entire time, because that's really boring as well, and I'm sure everyone's sick of that. And so I went to the East Coast, and then, going to school, everyone keeps telling you 1 degree is not good enough. So of course you have to get something else. And my grand plan was to be a teacher, and everyone kept telling me, no, there's no jobs in teaching. Now there's hurting for teachers, but that's besides the point. I decided, I actually want to do something with my degree. I spent the time, money, and effort. I would like to use it. And so I decided, I'm going to go into museum studies. That's what, people choose to go to museums. They're not forced to learn about history in school, so they're actually choosing to go there. People go on field trips, they have fun. So I was like, I'll use my, degree for good. So I went into museum studies. And then even in museum studies, people kept telling me, oh, there's not many jobs. Why are you doing that? It's a waste of money, waste of time. And I'm like, I'll figure that out. So graduated, got that out of the way, and then came time to finding a job, which was a little tough. But I did find a job while still in school, part-time, and then that turned into full-time. So I do have quite a bit of experience, going on 6 years now, working in both not-for-profit and national museums. I figured I wanted to get a mix of both, want to see the difference, and that has really come into handy. Before October 2019, I'd never been to Saskatchewan. I'd been to Edmonton for a wedding and for a football tournament. But besides that, I hadn't been as west as Sault Ste. Marie. So the opportunity came to come to the Heritage Centre and kind of do what I was doing, but expand on that. And I went, okay, sure, yeah, opportunity. Flew out here, not only knowing a single person, and liked it enough to say, yeah, sure, let's do this. So I packed up my my bags in my tiny car. My wife drove out with me and then flew home because not enough time to pack up an apartment and a cat, and she didn't have a job out here, so she was going to keep working, and I moved out here. I didn't quite understand, and a lot of people didn't really understand why I would want to come out here. They kept asking me, oh, are you sure you want to come out here? Is this really what you want? And didn't quite understand what they were talking about. But I knew that I wanted to use the training and my schooling that I had to help the Heritage Centre. They're in a transition period. They want to make, I don't know if anyone's shocked by this anymore, but the idea is to make this museum another national museum. So I knew using my experience, I could help with that. And going forward, the future is bright. I'm going to help. We're going to plan it out. So I got here in November. Everything's going swimmingly. Christmas time, not really time for planning, but go through the Christmas stuff, go home for Christmas, say hi to everyone, come back, rejuvenated, have ideas, sat down, we planned out the entire first half of the year with events and programs and new workshops to do. And as M applied, we've been, most of you have been working at home for a year now. So everything kind of got a halt and no one quite knew what was happening. Now with each heritage site, museum, center, historic house, they're so different and unique. There's so many pros and cons. The Heritage Center is the same, of course, but there's a little bit of an added twist to that. So in this building, it's kind of like you've put different businesses in the same building and you kind of operate out of one place, but you're sharing it, but you also have your quiet spaces. So that's what it's like here. The Heritage Center owns the building and we have the displays and everything, but the collection is not ours. It's the RCMP's collection. So this creates a very unique partnership that not many museums have to deal with or think about on a daily basis. So when it comes time to clean the artifacts, we have to coordinate together to open up the displays. The conservator, curator can properly take it out, move it to their area, clean it, do whatever repairs or document, photograph, and then a coordination has to happen to open it back up again. It's not just, hey, building technician, can you do this? And conservator, there's a lot more behind the scenes and coordinating that has to be done. But that also adds a bonus, if you will, to us. So if we are doing a tour or a kid asks a question or we're doing some research, some museums, all their conservators, curators, and all that are in a completely different building. If you're at a national museum or a big enough museum, that they're not all housed in the same place. And some small museums just have one employee that's responsible for everything and then a team of volunteers that helps them as well. So there's so many different spectrums. And what makes it lucky for us is if we ever have a question, we can go down the hall and knock on the curator's door and be like, hey, we have this question. What is this? And the good part about working with the RCMP Historical Collections Unit is they're a vast of knowledge. Our curator has worked in many different places. She's been here a long time. She constantly does research, comes up with all the exhibits and planning and all that. So she's a wealth of knowledge. The conservator, same thing. She has been here even before this building existed. She actually did the same museum program that I did. So we have that weird connection bond, but she also has ties to the RCMP. So everyone has ties to the RCMP. The registrar is able to take photos for us if we need anything for social media. Speaking of social media, I would say that is a very good tool, especially once people were not allowed to come into buildings. And it's funny, like many other places, they kind of went, hey, you're young. Here, you can do the social media. And I went, sure. Seemed like we had a bunch of time on our hands, but what do you do with it? Well, the whole main message, I guess, of this talk is how to tell the story of the RCMP. Such vast, almost 150 years, almost, it's 6 years younger than the country itself. How do you take what we have here, especially in a COVID time? And I, of course, I only talk recently because I've only been here since 2019, so I can't speak to what's happened before me. But we started with social media, posting photos of artifacts, coming up with ideas of how to engage. We started to do craft videos because that was the thing to do in the spring, make bird feeders, make sun out of a paper plate. but we weren't really telling the story of the RCMP. We were just getting eyes on our social media, which is, I guess, great. But it's not really pushing the message forward, telling the story, actually doing what the mandate says your museum should be doing. So we had to kind of pivot. And that's where, we had no idea at what point we'd be able to open. And checking Facebook every single day, you see this doom and gloom. You're, oh, what's going to happen in the world? Oh, are we going to get a vaccine? And like a lot of people, it was getting a little sad. And then I saw one friend who is a teacher, and teachers are going through obviously a very hard time with learning how to teach from home, do video calls, all your kids are at home, distractions. And they were asking for ideas on what to do. And at first I was going to be like, hey, like I'll send you a craft video. But then they were in grade 8, and making a sun out of a paper plate probably wasn't going to hold their attention for more than a minute. So I thought, well, you know what? I have a cell phone. I can, walk them through an exhibit. If they have any questions, show them something. Sure. So I messaged this teacher. I was like, hey, would this interest you? And she ate that up right away because why not? Something that she doesn't have to do for an hour. And so I was like, okay, like, what do you want to focus on? And she's not a history teacher, she's a French teacher. So she was like, I personally don't care. If you do it in English, I don't even care. So I was like, okay, cool. That's how teachers are feeling these days. Awesome. So set it up, and this was in May. Also around the same time, we were supposed to be getting summer students. That got delayed a little bit. But so do the presentation. I was kind of nervous. Like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what the kids are going to be like. But then I just thought it's just going to be like they're here doing a workshop or a tour, like they're just on a screen. So do the presentation, and the kids were captivated the entire time. And I was like, oh, this is the opposite of what teachers are saying. A few cats walked by and a dog barked, but that was fine, And so after that, I sat down and I talked with my colleague who's really, really amazing and used to be a teacher. And I was like, do you think like we could do this? And she was like, sure. What do we have to lose? And I was like, yeah, exactly. We're not really doing anything besides this. So once the summer student starts, we kind of sat them down. We're like, what would you like to see in a presentation? So we started to get them involved right away, going through, and we came up with about 4 different tours. And they were all directly linked to the RCMP, which is what we should be doing. So how to basic, we did about 15 tours in the rest of that school year up until the end of June. And had 500 kids, and we were like, oh, like this is crazy. Like, and then of course at the end of June, museums were allowed to open, so we focused on that, and we got really busy with people who were very tired of being cooped up and wanted to explore. So throughout the summer, we got to talk with people from most of Canada. Of course, the Atlantic bubble they weren't allowed to leave. So, but we had people from Quebec all the way across. And I think this was the biggest benefit of us, how to tell the story. So of course, the RCMP, have good sides and bad sides. And as a museum, we're supposed to be not neutral and tell both sides. Now, of course, the other side of this is the RCMP. They own all the artifacts, and they want to usually come out and look good, have a positive experience. As any organization or business, they want the good stuff to outweigh the bad stuff, which is a little bit difficult in museum terms. But the people with the Historical Collections Unit have been more than gracious in helping us come up with research with photographs. So we have questions of the week on our social media now. We can if they're fun days. Something I got really into is all those wacky, like, it's backwards sweater day or something. Because again, there was not much to do for the first few months. So looking at all the ones that applied to the Heritage Centre and the RCMP, so we're not going to do backwards sweater day because that has nothing to do with the RCMP, but like this past weekend was Canine Veterans Day. We were able to coordinate with the Historical Collections Unit. They were able to get us a photo of a dog vest, and we linked it to a charity that raises money for retired police dogs so that they could get surgeries or any veterinarian help. So we've learned over time, I guess, how to coordinate together, how to, not just the day I'd be like, hey, can I get a photo of this? I just realized it's this. So coming up with a plan and sitting down and talking with each other. Of course, can't do that unless you're in a giant room where you can social distance, but chatting, kind of going through, coming up with a plan, just like we had in the early days, to be able to plan out the back half of the year, what we could do in person, what we wanted to do in the internet and social media. And throughout the summer, we started to plan out what tours and what information does the public want. And we took what the people were most interested when they visited the Heritage Centre, the questions they asked, because of course text panels can only show so much. And so we started to compile what people were asking, what they wanted to do, what they wanted to know, anything that they were missing. We took some information from the teachers that we did do a tour with and asked them what subjects that they'd like to see elsewhere. And we used those kind of summer months to research, talk with the Historical Collections Unit, go through the workshops that we already have, and try and see if we can make those virtual, because that's the biggest thing. A lot of stuff is hands-on or in person. No one's thought of doing something virtual before we had to be forced to do it. So now that's kind of on people's mind. Now that being said, a lot of stuff just hasn't worked out. We had a backpack program where it was designed for kids going around. We purchased motorized motorbikes. So the kids could go around the galleries, take a backpack, and each exhibit would be an activity book, a puzzle, something to do with the theme of that exhibit here in the museum. And this was supposed to help the kids stay engaged or not be bored or say, hey, mom, or allow the kids to experience something different than what the parents were, because again, a lot of this history is, I don't want to say more grown up, but it takes an older mind to kind of fully understand what's happening, other than, oh, look, a uniform or a horsey. So we wanted to kind of still let the kids learn, but give them some information, but don't overwhelm them so that they get bored. Of course, that had to be shelved because no one wants to touch and feel right now. So that's kind of on the back burner, ready to go whenever it's appropriate to. The motorbikes just were sitting there. So what we did was we allowed the kids to go through the galleries with the motorbikes. Got very loud, but the kids were having fun. And then it was decided that maybe making a track with all the open space where normally the tables and people could sit and have coffee were. So that is what is there now. So we have a motorbike setup, a course setup where kids can go and drive the motorbikes. We clean them after every use, but that is usually now the kids' favorite thing to do. They don't really care about the museum or the exhibits. They just want to ride the motorbike and go fast, which is great. Not really what we wanted kids to go in and have fun. Way off track on that side point, but bringing it back is, so taking what we saw with the kids, what they were interested in, what the visitors wanted to see, and getting feedback from the teachers, we decided that, okay, we're going to come back with virtual tours, I guess kind of 2.0. We're not going to charge because we didn't know if teachers would have a budget. We don't have the infrastructure to take online payments, and it it would just get too back and forth, bogged down. We're like, you know what, we don't know how much time we're going to have. We're just going to free for this school year. Hopefully we can get a sponsor going forward. That's the kind of best case scenario for next school year. So we're going, and it's mostly teachers in Saskatchewan and a few other teachers scattered around that people know of. And then I guess word gets out on social media. We try and pump up people joining, and then more and more teachers hear about it and they want to do it, and then they have requests. And of course, what is being taught now is not the bright, fluffy RCMP stories that I learned at school, but tougher subjects like residential schools, how they treated the Métis and Louis Riel. And so we kind of went to HCU and we're like, teachers are asking for these stories, are not really asking permission, but is it okay? And they were all for it, because this is, that's the full story, and that's what should be told, not picking and choosing what is decided to be told. So we went, okay, and it kind of exploded from there. We have 11 virtual tours that we offer currently, going through different themes. We are developing a few others, but those are kind of on the back burner. We're waiting for summer students, I guess, hoping that we get some, because this is essentially what our full-time job is now. We've usually it was like 3 or 4 tours a week, and then it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And of course, to add more torture to us, we added a literacy program in January. And usually in person, we do a literacy program where kids learn about reading, and we apply that with a book from a RCMP officer and his dog that he wrote about. And so we used that, and it was very popular. I did a lot of tours last January in person, and we're like, we could probably do this online, no big deal. And so that tour exploded. So we were talking to kindergartners and grade 1s from all over, not just Saskatchewan now, but we were doing in Alberta, Manitoba, Ontario, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, BC. And of course, word of mouth, once one person does something, kind of goes around, and we're like, oh man, like it got to the point where we're like, maybe we need to hire someone, but that's very tough when we're not, people aren't paying for this. So it's really tough to go to the top and be like, hey, we need another person. We're really busy. We're not making any money off of this, but look, we're talking about it. And then something else happened, especially with the people in the local area. They would come for a tour and they would beg their parents to visit us. And so on the weekends, we saw 1 or 2 kids come in and be like, hey, I know you. And of course, your immediate response is, of course, I know you too. You just look different with, I can only see your eyes now. Not really knowing who the kids are, but or be like, oh, I had a tour with Debbie, and be like, oh, that's awesome. So kids started to see the RCMP and then want to go see it for themselves, which was something we didn't really anticipate, but that was really positive for us and showed that we were doing something good. I guess completely off topic there, but going back and really showing what the RCMP, all the stories and what the teachers want to show. So coming up with new ideas. So our 2 latest tours are Métis and the RCMP. Since way early on, the Northwest Mounted Police and Métis had such a intertwining of each other's histories, starting with the start of Manitoba. So even before the Northwest Mounted Police started, but just that lingering effect and how it rolled into the Northwest Mounted Police having to come in and deal with and take orders from the government. That's very, very popular right now, especially in Alberta. We did 1 tour in Alberta, and 1 teacher posted on her Facebook page, and now we have 48 tours booked 98% of them are in Alberta because all the teachers are hitting that part in the curriculum. One idea that we had was to write out education overviews. So touching on the curriculum and what points our tours hit in those curriculums to make it easy for teachers to go write out reports or justify that this field trip is necessary. Wanted to do that. And then once we started to do tours from across Canada, that's a lot of different curriculums and just became very anxious and overwhelming when thinking about it. So we didn't want to start that yet, maybe in the summer when school's over. And that's the other thing too, telling the story of the RCMP. We wanted to get an overview, hit different age groups and different themes. The younger kids tend to go for the animal focused ones, so the horses or canine cadets, because it has to do with animals. And we talk about the history with the RCMP. And then once you get into grade 4, grade 5, that's when you can get into the start of the Northwest Mounted Police, the Métis, the start of that all. Going forward, we can talk about science. The good thing is the RCMP have 150 different, I guess, jobs within them. So there's science-based stuff, there's historical stuff, there's weaponry, there's vehicles. So we're able to pull into a lot of the different themes that the RCMP touch within their jobs, and we're able to kind of translate that and make a tour around it, as long as it'll be an hour. And as long as teachers will book it, that is, I guess, the positive stuff. Getting back to talking about the not so good stuff, teachers are more interested in learning about that, I guess, the unhappy side, and being able to do that, get the information using HCU, researching, getting stories from members as well. And that's another positive thing, is we're able to reach out, being right next door to Depot, we can reach out to people within the RCMP and use stories, firsthand stories, knowledge, to be able to go and build information or have a back end story to tell the kids that they might be interested in. Also, all of our tours are live, just like this. And we decided that doing live would just be best, because if kids are getting bored, falling asleep, we can quickly pivot or just end the tour. If kids seem interested in something that they see along the way, we can kind of stop and talk about that. We can switch if a theme is not appropriate for the age group, we can just completely switch right away. So a lot of places started to do just like film tours, and we just thought that wasn't very personable. And part of that is we're representatives of the RCMP telling the story, good or bad, and we want to be the best ambassadors as possible. So if there are questions, tough questions, kids don't understand something, we want to be there so that they get the most information, the best information, so that they can make critical thinking for themselves. Yes, they were involved in taking children and bringing them to residential schools. Did the RCMP officers want to do that? No. And then you can ask them, if your boss asks you to do something and you don't want to do it, what do you say? Do you say no? Do you have a reason for saying no? Or do you just not find it fun? And then using that critical thinking to talk about, well, do you think they were able to say no to the government, who is their boss? If they say no, they're going to get fired. What about if they have a family? And so kind of putting more thought into those questions that I was asked in grade 10, which was a long time ago now. More or less just, you learn about this, but you don't learn the backstory. You don't learn what the officers were thinking. Is just a blip in history, and you keep going. And now more and more people in history and museums, research papers are asking those behind the scenes questions, those harder, tougher questions, those really figuring out each person's side and the way they thought, instead of just being like, oh, well, they listened, so they clearly were okay with it. So kind of boiling all that down into how to tell that to a kindergartner versus someone in grade 12. Another tour that we got asked to do and did very, very quickly was I guess, a Remembrance Day tour. And we kind of turned that into, we call it conflict and peace. So we talk about all the conflicts that the Northwest Mounted Police and RCMP have been involved, from them volunteering to go to World War I and II, stuff that has happened at home from the Northwest Rebellion and the Red River Rebellion to peacetime. So from Cold War on, how has the RCMP impacted worldwide policing and peacekeeping, and what does that mean to be a part of that, to go and help and train police officers around the world, to go and have women RCMP officers go and train the first all women police force in Afghanistan, and getting those firsthand stories and showing the artifacts. That's the other thing. They don't have to look at my face for the entire hour. We're all sick of it. I'm sick of it, and I've just been talking for 30 minutes. So doing all that, showing artifacts, showing things that kids can be like, oh, cool, like this is the actual uniform. This is a horse. This is a collar. And telling stories around that, allowing the kids to have that personal attachment, just like anyone who visits a heritage center, a museum, a living historic site. They see that object, they see that person making the bread in the old style bakery. And even though they're not here in person, we find that they still are engaged in asking questions. Of course, not every tour is up for that. That's why I just try and add humor. Doesn't always translate, but I find if they start to laugh, then they kind of come back in and pay attention. Oh, sorry, 1 second. I just have to take this.
I think I don't know if you're trying to talk to us, Justin, but you might be muted.
Oh, yes, I am.
There we go.
All right. Hello. All right. So, of course, you don't want to just see me talking, sitting there. And I thought, instead of making a PowerPoint or a presentation, just kind of give you the real kind of experience. So we're actually walking in the galleries. So like I said, we have 11 different tours talking different aspects of the RCMP. And throughout the time, we've found videos, we've made our own PowerPoints, different ways to engage the kids. So again, they're just not looking at a screen. They're kind of getting a break from hearing us talk. Because again, I'm sure all adults can know how that can be. Oh, I didn't do. That's what I didn't do. So technology has also been a fun thing, figuring out what works, what doesn't work, how to share screens, and learning different programs, because not all teachers just use Zoom. You would think that, because I'd never heard Zoom until last March, and now they're everywhere. So bear with me. All right, that should do it. So yeah, so learning how to use stuff like Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, because every school board and school division is different. All that being said, you also get a lot of walking done during these tours, because you go back and forth as part of the being live. Okay, there we go, it worked. So one of the fun videos that we showed is this video, and I won't show it all, but it's designed for kids. And just finding any resource that you can for these virtual tours. Continues on like that. I won't show you the entire video. But that video and another video, I've memorized hearing it so much, so I hear it in my sleep. But one unique thing about the Heritage Centre that I don't think any other museum, other couple, is that we have a dog that works here now. So this has opened us up to a great topic point, is talking about the police, the K9 unit, the police service depot that is in Innisfail. And if you ever go to Innisfail, which is just above Calgary or closer to Red Deer, but you can actually visit it and take a tour and see the dogs training. And who doesn't love puppies? I mean, even kids who don't listen, they see a puppy and they just go, ah. So Indy is our, I guess, employee of the month of the year. She gets all the credit. This is Indy's dad. He's a search and rescue dog. His name's Capone, and then Kira. And then if you want to guess which one is Indy, this is her litter. So here is Indy. And because a visit with us is not complete unless you meet her, let's go see what Indy's up to. So Indy has been a real star for us. She's done everything from virtual walks on our Facebook, doing Facebook Live during the lockdown. We took Indy for a walk and people actually watched. We started our own YouTube show called Indy and Monty, where Indy and our mascot Monty, which is usually me, go on adventures and then we voice them. It got a little bit hard when we opened. We didn't have time to film, but it will be coming back. And so you don't have to look at me. Here is Indy. Come on. So Indy is a German Shepherd, and she's about 1 year and 4 months now, or almost 4 months. So she's still not finished growing. And she failed out of the program because she was too nice. So Indy allows us to talk about what dogs go through, their training, how they can be cut at any moment, what happens to them, what happens to dogs that make it, the jobs that they do. We talk about the people and how they become dog handlers. And without a dog, I don't think it would hold much or the same emphasis or importance, or I guess people listen more because they see Indy and they see her in person. If you come and visit us, you can pet her. And another, I guess, positive thing is about Indy that she actually is kind of a stress reliever for cadets. They can come over and run with her, they can play with her, kind of get a break from all the training and constant being bombarded with all of their schoolwork and everything that comes with learning to be an RCMP officer. And she actually goes over there and does cadet runs with them with a dog handler, because they have to learn what it's like to be in the field with a dog on a call before obviously doing that in real life. So she's gotten a secondary job as well doing that. And it also gives us another way to talk with cadets. And having Depot right there, we were doing tours of Depot, that has stopped for the time being. But being able to talk with cadets, get their experiences, show, from our parking lot now, show some of the buildings that you can see. It just adds that another element of being able to talk about cadets' experiences, because that's what a lot of the times kids and adults alike want to know, oh, I always wanted to be a police officer. What's it like? Well, you get up at 5 o'clock, you do this. You sometimes get forceful encouragement. It's totally not yelling because you're learning. And talking about stuff like that gives that kind of well-rounded talk about the RCMP from the minute that you step on here, you're a cadet, to graduation, to where they're posted, and everything that has happened in between. And I guess with that, I will open it up to any questions. I don't think I saw anyone fall asleep, so that's good. No one broke the rule. I was probably all over the place. But yeah, any questions?
Well, thanks, Justin. I was saying, and I said in the chat there, it's definitely our first community chat with a K9 guest. For sure.
Indy acts like she's shy, but she loves the spotlight, so.
Oh, that's awesome. Not seeing any questions coming in, but we'll give folks a minute here if you want to put them in the chat if you have any, or raise your hand at all. I did have one question for you, Justin.
Yeah.
I guess I was wondering, I think you kind of got around to this, but I was wondering, was it the virtual tours? Was that kind of the impetus to start maybe addressing some of the harder questions and the tougher subjects within the tours? Was that kind of where it started from, or was that something that was kind of happening before the virtual tours?
It was happening. I want to say not as frequent or as fast, but the more people asked about it, it's always been a topic and kind of on the list of to address fully is reconciliation, treatment, residential schools, all of that, and the RCMP is starting to get into that more now. As well, but we wanted to be able to talk about it. We have the place of reflection just on the other side of our driveway here, which is dedicated to all the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And it was placed here a while ago, and since I started, we kind of wanted to do something with that and talk about it. And we've created a committee. And we have lots of involvement from the RCMP, from the Historical Collections Unit, from Indigenous leaders, and ourselves here. So we're actually coming up with a historical component, a workshop education. So it actually will be like a full field trip available. And we're going to be able to, we're trying to find sponsors so we can add like a plaque and benches so people can fully embrace themselves and get that reflection that it was designed to be. And we want to tell that story because people just see a medicine wheel. Well, some people, if it's a medicine wheel of rocks, but to the average person, they just see rocks in a formation. They have no idea what it is. So we want to draw attention to that and how involved, and we're right here, it's at Depot, talk about reconciliation and involve the RCMP with that. So that has, being closed has allowed us to kind of talk and research and create a committee. And it's coming along. We're almost there, but that, along with the workshops or the virtual tours and constantly people asking these tough questions, have given us kind of the kick to be like, no, like people really want to learn about this, and it's not just the hot topic of the year. People really want to get down and learn about why, the nitty gritty, the people's experiences, what they thought. So it's not just on a surface level, they really want to dig deep. And being able to do that, and again, talking to people all over Canada and doing virtual tours all over Canada has really helped as well, because the RCMP is Canada's police force. It's not just Saskatchewan. So getting that national kind of idea, national information, what people think, what people learn, has really benefited us here.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's really interesting to see how it's allowing, your museum to be responsive to people's needs and questions and inquiries and things. We do also have a question from Joanna in Prince Albert. She's wondering, have you had teachers requesting recorded tours? We've been doing live virtual tours up here in PA, but have had a request for a recorded tour. Have you had any experience making recorded tours for classes at all?
One teacher recorded the tour for students who were sick. I think they were isolating. So, so yeah, we've had one teacher. I mean, I don't mind. Again, people aren't paying for these tours right now, so it's not like we have intellectual property or we're really protecting what we say. Maybe going forward, if schools do have to pay, then we won't allow recording, just because then they could just share it, just like taping a movie or something. Yeah, right now we don't. It's not so much of an issue, and it's not a problem or people requesting. But if more and more people going forward, if schools have to go back to virtual teaching again and again, who knows what the future holds? I hope it doesn't, and I try and be optimistic. But yeah, so far it hasn't been an issue or a huge request.
Yeah, it's definitely also interesting to think about how, kind of as you're a museum for the National Police Force and kind of have a national perspective, that now you're able, regardless of how things move forward with COVID, you're able to now potentially also have a presence with students across the country. That's pretty cool too.
Yeah, of course, someone like planning for the future could have like put that in their mind and be like, oh my God, look at the potential. We had no idea. We were just hoping someone would say yes and want to do a tour with us. And then it's just kind of grown. And once we started to get people in Alberta and Manitoba and then Ontario, and we're like, yeah, like the RCMP applies to them too. It's not just local. And the Heritage Centre has been, I guess, focused a lot on just people coming to the Heritage Centre to see Depot, because we're not a huge staff here, and once COVID hit, we're minuscule, and so it's always been a focus on people coming here. But this has allowed us to take a step back and be like, look, what we can do nationwide, and that helps in the efforts if we want to become a national or can become a national, that we have this. Well, look, we've talked to Newfoundland, we've talked to BC, we've talked to the Yukon, because we're able to touch them now. And the virtual tour, going forward, if everything is normal, if you will, by the fall, we're still going to be doing them, because we've hit that market where, everyone at some point learns about the Northwest Mounted Police or RCMP. It doesn't matter what province you are, if they're your police or not. And again, it's part of Canada's history, and it's told in some form or another between the ages of kindergarten and grade 12. And we've done university tours, we've done international tours for students learning about Canada or learning English. We've done seniors' homes. We started to do virtual tours for them since they were cooped up. And that was the thing. We wanted to start an outreach program, and we had the bones of it, and then March hit, so can't really go anywhere. We still want to do outreach programs to senior homes, to fairs, to schools, because it's not always affordable to be able to come here, especially if you're not in Regina. So again, that's part of making an effort to be nationally and broadening your horizon, if you will, and talking to teachers and just opening up Zoom and filming whatever you're looking at. Surprisingly did all that, and a dog too. The dog helps.
For sure. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in, but we will give folks a minute or two. But yeah, no rush to kind of, if you have questions, please do put them in the chat or raise your hand. No problem at all. But yeah, thanks, Justin. It was really interesting to hear. I know we kind of heard from you early on in the pandemic last year, and you were talking about some of the initiatives you were doing. But it's really, really interesting to hear how it's evolved and the different doors and avenues and things. You know, this pandemic has opened up. You know, it's been obviously challenging for everyone across the world, but it's, you know, it's interesting to see and hear some of the opportunities that have been presented as well. So I thanks for your time and yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, may I ask
one
question? Sorry, I was on mute. I haven't been to the museum for maybe 10 years or so, but the last time I was there, I was surprised to see that the exhibitions on display were the same as from 1972 when it first opened. And I was more than a little surprised. And I wondered, I would ask you, Justin, if you've had any opportunity to update your museology, your displays, permanent or temporary. In fact, do you have temporary space?
Yeah.
That's my gist. Just
no, that question gets asked a lot, especially if people went to the old museum on Depot. So since the museum opened here in 2007, there's been they added one exhibit. They took away one opening day exhibit and changed it into the musical ride exhibit. So I would say that is probably the newest permanent exhibit. But we do have special exhibit spaces. And last year we did do one. We had plans to do 2 or 3. I shouldn't say we, the Historical Collections Unit had plans. They did do the Halloween exhibit at a smaller scale for COVID. This year, just with the uncertainty, they're not going to do a special exhibit until Halloween again, and they change up the Halloween exhibit. So another good thing is we can kind of tell spooky stories and with the kind of weird and stories of the RCMP. So and they have the artifacts to help tell that story. So that always helps. So that will be coming back in October. And then starting in 2022, they'll kind of pick back up with their special exhibits going forward. So they got some really cool ones planned, especially going into 2023, which is the 150th anniversary of the RCMP. So they have a plan. They're just raring to go.
So excuse me, but this historical collections unit, is that part of the museum or part of the Mounties?
That's a great question. So they are RCMP employees. So they're not employed by the Heritage Centre because we are a not-for-profit. So they are actual government employees, where we are not. We're not-for-profit. We're the museum employees.
Justin, do you have any idea why it was set up this way, this separation? It's like
what? Yeah, that's
it's like, well, let's have a museum, but okay, it'll be a corporate museum, but maybe not. It'll be over there. That's
why I say this place is really, really unique. It was the collection was always held by the RCMP, and when the museum started in 1973 as a centennial project, it was kind of created from retired members who formed the Friends of the Mounted Police Heritage Centre.
Yeah.
And so they're the ones that have been kind of maintaining and got the fundraising. Like they did a bunch of fundraising to build this building here, and they still do fundraising. They're still involved. They have an office here in the museum because they contact and they keep up, and they're a registered charity themselves, and they have projects such as the Pillars of the Force, where retired members or members can get a brick laid or their name on the pillars of the museum.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
having to explain that to people who don't understand museums, it's
Yeah,
even more
yeah,
confusing. You
yeah.
get a little bit more of it. So so that's how it was set up,
So
and it's just
Mhm.
always been that way.
I knew Malcolm, the first director, and Mr. McKay, the second. And looking back, I realize now that their interest is more in military history than in what museums do and show to people. And so, because I'd sure like, I mean, it's such a rich history with lots of pluses and minuses, a great story to tell, but
Yeah.
you need some museology and some people like yourself in there to tell the story in profound ways and interesting ways and humorous ways.
And that's the thing. So to my knowledge, I'm only the second person who has museum experience to work here.
Right.
A lot of the times it's, you know, some of the directors have been retired members,
Yeah,
because they know the story of the RCMP.
yeah.
There are people with retail experience who run the gift shop.
Mhm.
I mean, most places they don't hire, but a lot of the summer students were just children of members who are here. So, you know, some were in school for education or were becoming teachers. So that's always good, but not hardly any have experience working in the heritage fields before or have gone to school for that. So
Yeah,
that's kind of been the gaping hole that I found when I started was
yeah.
even for grants, we don't qualify for like stuff like YCW, stuff that I was used to applying for at my old museums, because sky's the limit. But here, because we have connections to the RCMP and stuff, so we don't qualify for stuff like YCW. So we have to rely on certain grants to get summer students, and
Yes, yes.
you know, we're behind because we don't find out till April, so we don't. And so
I know
yeah,
that
you guys get it. So
I know the difficulty. I was on a board down here in Niagara a few years ago, and they had a similar problem. They had to separate the gallery function from the foundation in order to be eligible to get all of those grants that are out there for museums, and to play and to deal with their public image as a well-founded gallery when it was everybody perceived this foundation as wealthy, and the poor gallery was suffering from a lack of professional. Anyway, it took some while to separate them, but it was finally done to some success. But I'm from Saskatchewan, and I know the RCMP well. In fact, I did a lot of research in popular culture of the Mounties a long time ago. And
oh, well, you might be interested in a special exhibit happening next year. Not going to give away anything, but it might have to do with something like
well, maybe
that.
I'll propose something to you. But anyway,
maybe.
It's such a rich part of our history in more ways than one. And I just have been frustrated most of my life at not getting to the depth of it. And so I appreciate your efforts.
Yeah, and going forward too, with the efforts of trying to become a national museum, that just opens a whole bunch of can of worms as well, since, you know, the Heritage Centre doesn't own the collection, and the RCMP is already a government entity, and there's just a lot of hoops and
It might
legislation.
It might be a tool for solving some of those issues.
Yes, I do believe it will. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Em.
Yeah, thank you for your questions. Yeah, I'll just give a moment here in case anybody else would like to jump in with any questions.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll probably wrap it up then. Thank you, Justin, for your presentation and for giving us a little glimpse inside the Heritage Centre as well. That was great. And yeah, our next community chat, if you're interested in attending, is 2 weeks from today. And it's just going to be a bit of a check-in, a COVID-19 one-year mark check-in and networking opportunity. And after that, we have some really other great content lined up. We have Helena Gessner and Ian Hampton from the Diefenbaker Canada Centre. They're going to be talking about points of view, biased interpretation, and emotional response to storytelling in museums. And then we have Julie Mushinsky, I think I'm saying her name right. And she's going to be talking about enduring objects, decolonizing Canadian ethnographic collections. So some really solid presentations coming up. Again, we do record all of our community chat presentations. So if there's one that you have missed or that you can't attend in the future, you can find all the community chat information on our website. And I'm going to throw the link in the chat there right now. Yeah, thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us. And thanks, Justin, for your presentation. And yeah, see you all in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Justin.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.